We begin with the Trump White House getting skewered on the Epstein scandal. Today, a new filing from Trump's beleaguered DOJ that is already giving rise to suspicion and criticism. Plus, new legal action from a leading watchdog group and yet another warning from a Trump ally about the political peril of the current scandal. As New Republic reports today on Epstein, even MAGA world can smell that Trump is hiding something. In a new filing this afternoon, the Department of Justice pushing forward on requests to unseal grand jury material. But legal observers say it looks like theater and a barely concealed attempt to appear interested in transparency while pursuing information most experts believe won't contain any new revelations. New details today on Trump's desperate attempt to quell political blowback. The White House reportedly, quote, asking podcaster Joe Rogan to help ease the uproar over the Epstein files. Look, Rogan has been a vocal critic of the administration's handling of the Epstein files. The other problem for Trump concerns Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell. Trump has dangled a pardon for her, which critics say looks like a blatant attempt to elicit friendly testimony from her. Today, Trump's former press secretary, Sean Spicer, warns all of this could backfire spectacularly.
What do you think the reaction would be if Donald Trump pardoned Maxwell?
I actually think about this differently. I would say he would be under the impression that he was going to be able to say that they got something from her, further information. I think if anyone who sells him on this is lying to him. My point, and that's why you're like, what is his reaction going to be? I think this is very akin to Comey, right? When he fired Comey, he was told, oh, if you fire Comey, everyone's going to cheer you on. And he missed I think people misled him on how that was going to go down. I think this is similar. There will be outrage like never before if she gets a deal.
Also, the government transparency group Democracy Forward filing a new lawsuit to force the administration to release the Epstein files. The head of the group saying, quote, President Trump has repeatedly said he would release the Epstein files. His spokesperson claims his administration is the most transparent in history, and yet they continue to hide from the American people. The only thing transparent about the Trump-Vance administration is how clearly they continue to disregard our nation's laws. Joining me now to discuss is Ambassador Norm Eisen, Executive Chair of the Democracy Defenders Fund, co-founder of the Contrarian, and former Obama ethics czar. His group is suing the administration for Epstein information. Also with us is Tara Setmeyer, co-founder and CEO of the Seneca Project, author of Uncompromised on Substack, and former GOP communications director. So, Norm, I'll start with you. What are you hoping to get out of suing the DOJ and this administration for the Epstein files? Are you hoping to sort of highlight how non-transparent they are, highlight how they're obstructing justice, highlight how they are probably hiding something or somebody? Or do you actually think that they will release the information in any shape, where, form that we can actually understand or see as the public?
Jason, we filed the very first of what are now 11 FOIA requests against the administration. And there have been a series of steps since, with some proceeding in court. So far, what we've seen are litigation over demands for faster treatment. First out of the box, we expect that we will file the very first action demanding the file themselves. And why is that so important? Donald Trump appears in these files. They haven't produced the Trump Epstein information, and instead they've taken a convicted felon, serious sex offenses involving minors, Ghislaine Maxwell. She was interviewed by Donald Trump's personal former criminal counsel, Todd Blanche, and then she's moved to a minimum security facility. It stinks of a cover-up, Jason. And so what we're trying to get at is what happened, including Trump Epstein files, including Ghislaine Maxwell, and who was involved in the administration. The American people deserve to know. And frankly, victims are outraged about this movement of Maxwell. They need to know as well.
So, Tara, I'm going to go to the comms part about this first. So we have reports now that the White House is trying to beg Joe Rogan to go out and play defense for them on this particular issue. And I tend to be skeptical of that. I mean, first and foremost, I think it's ridiculous that the White House, with all of their apparatus and equipment, are going to a podcaster. But second, I don't think it's very likely that you're going to be able to convince any members of the MAGAsphere or the Manosphere or anybody else who cares about this to change their mind. I mean, do you think that's likely? Do you think that the administration could put pressure on people who have staked their reputations on the importance of these files to somehow flip the script in order to make Trump and Vance happy?
Well, I think you've lost the plot when you have to go to Joe Rogan's podcast to explain the White House's position on the Epstein files and why they've given preferential treatment to a convicted child sex predator. They're in a bad way. And frankly, they violated every rule of crisis communications from day one about how to handle this situation. They've mishandled it for weeks, which is why we're still here. Right. The simple solution here is to release the damn files. If you have nothing to hide, you release the files. They were awfully gung-ho about this until they actually saw what was in the files, I'm assuming, very early on in the administration. They campaigned, many of them campaigned on it. Many in the podcaster, right-wing podcaster, grifter world made their millions and fortunes on pushing conspiracy theories around this and other things. Some of them got cushy positions in the administration, like the FBI director and deputy FBI director. So This is a huge problem for them in a number of areas, and they can't expect people who have been focused on this for years to all of a sudden just believe the BS that they're feeding them. That's the problem. And Joe Rogan, I mean, to his credit, was skeptical of this and why they've mishandled this and said, like, this isn't making sense. What's the problem here? I don't think sending Donald Trump's former personal attorney, now DOJ official, who interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell and gave her some, sweetheart immunity and moved her to a cushy club fed, is going to convince the Joe Rogans of the world that now all of a sudden everything's kosher. This is a failed strategy because they're full of crap. They're BSing people, and the MAGAs are understanding that. And you have now the victims and the survivors who are coming out speaking more about their stories, which is another PR nightmare for the White House, because now they have agency and they're telling their horrific stories of what they went through.
What is the possible justification for saying we're going to try to make Hillary Clinton testify in this case, but we don't want to hear from the actual victims of Jeffrey Epstein who are ready and willing to come forward?
Nor from the prosecutor who put together the sweetheart deal.
No, I mean, and we can look at, can we just go back and look at this timeline of events of how this just, since July 6th, when Axios got that memo, which actually only made the public way more curious because the DOJ identified over 1,000 victims, which everyone still wants to hear from. Then the Trump DOJ request unsealing, July 18th, July 25th, Deputy AG Blanche meets with Ghislaine Maxwell, and by August 1st, she's at Club Fed, the minimum security prison. And now, August 8th, Trump's DOJ requests to unseal the grand jury exhibits from Epstein Maxwell. They have made this an ongoing disaster for themselves. This is totally of their own making, and they're treating it like a political problem. Do you think that it actually has transitioned, Alicia, to becoming a human problem and superseding politics?
I think, Michael, that is what Ayanna Pressley and others have succeeded in doing, which is returning the conversation to where it should have been the entire time, which is a conversation about justice, a conversation about systems, a conversation about accountability. So in this swirl of what has indeed become a political conversation, it almost seems as though there is an opportunity to have a legitimate and robust conversation about what justice could look like.
Well, you would think, Alicia, you would think. But here's the thing. All of this with the women coming forward and really, as I said, framing this and given what Michelle just said on Kush, is this, does it have a chilling effect on what DOJ does next in releasing the documents, or does it give them a little bit more spine due to the pressure that's going to be out there, where the more people hear from the victims, the more they want the departments to release the documents?
You know, that's a fascinating question. I think I'm not sure I know the answer to it, because I don't think that the DOJ is even thinking about. I honestly think the victims have been almost entirely out of their field of vision, and I think it has shown from the way they've conducted themselves and exactly what Michelle was talking about as well. So I think the idea of like integrating that into their thought process, that'll be a new one for them. But my guess is, just from the way they've conducted themselves throughout this, has just been like hemming and hawing and these excuses and non sequiturs, that they want to try to shut this down as quickly as possible and hope it gets out of the news cycle eventually. So I would be surprised if Trump and congressional Republicans open the door to a hearing with a bunch of these victims. It could very well be a good thing, particularly if they want to participate and they want to speak, given how much they've been put through the ringer in the last few weeks. But I don't see any particular reason the DOJ would want that to happen, either strategically or just on the merits. They just haven't cared about them.
So, to your point about getting this out of the way, that's something that House Speaker Mike Johnson thought he was going to be able to do by sending everybody home. And here we are.
You know the age-old saying, there's no honor among thieves, right? But we have to understand that the meaning of that is that people who fundamentally can't be trusted also can't trust each other, right? That if they would betray someone else to help you, or, in pursuit of shared profit, they could easily do the same to someone else. It's like the saying that if somebody cheats on you, or cheated on their ex, they might also cheat on you eventually. Just keep that in mind going forward. And I don't think Ghislaine has any loyalty to Trump, even if he gives her what she wants, but especially if it's not exactly clear. And the nature of any deal that they may have or not have likely wouldn't come until the last days of the Trump presidency, right? If there's going to be a pardon, he would do it in like December or January, 3.5 years from now, right? But he can't write that down anywhere, because if he does, that defeats the purpose of leaving it till the end. So there's no guarantee on either side. At any moment, they can doom one another, right? He could send her back to the more awful prisons. He could pull any deal out, even if she gives him what she wants. Donald could always, at the end of the day, give her a deal, and then after she's secured her release, her pardon, she could just trash him anyway, right? She does have to be careful, because anything she says could implicate her in state-level crimes that she hasn't yet been tried for. You remember, a pardon is only federal. If you commit a crime that's under the jurisdiction of, say, the state of New York, then a presidential pardon does nothing to save you. But hypothetically, if Trump lets her off scot-free, then she could just drop the bomb on him anyway. There's no trust here. There's none. There is none. And so I don't think there's loyalty there. And she will. I'm not saying she has necessarily. That's why there are question marks in the title and stuff. But she would have no qualms about making a deal to hurt Trump to save her own behind.